my hey, I got something to say. The internet gods were going weird. I was in, I was out. But I'm here now, and do I have a real treat for you? Talk about spreading joy. Well, this woman, to say, heroic public speaking, yes, I did. Valerie Hope. And I was like, girlfriend, you have to be on the show. Oh, yay! Woo, woo!
Hi. Can you hear me okay?
Oh my goodness, they can hear you all around the world, girlfriend.
Love it.
So, tell us everything there is in 30 seconds. No, I'm kidding you. Don't tell us anything yet. I want to hear all about your travels, but before we do, I'm going to read your short little bio, okay?
Sure.
Right? I love this bio, though. Being a curious and creative learner sets Valerie Hope, yes, they all want to know if you changed your name, I'm sure you haven't, apart as a leadership coach and professional speaker. Holler! Got to meet her at HBS. After traveling to more than 30 countries and living with 400 plus host families. That's a whole book. That's a memoir on itself. She's learned that life is the best teacher and the human being living it is the star pupil. I'm going to say it again. And the human being living it is the star pupil. For the past 25 years, Valerie has been called to inspire and activate global leaders to become more conscious, connected, and creative. Valerie, 400 freaking families?
I know. I kind of stopped counting, but I feel that that was 20 plus years ago now, because that was, when I was up with people. So that was part of the job. The job was to live with different host families. But I've kind of taken that same spirit as I lived throughout this last few years, where anytime I stay with somebody, it's kind of like a host family all over again. And not necessarily related to me. These are people who opened up their homes, either their friends, families, neighbors, etc. And I get to take a peek into their lives.
So you love humans.
I love humans. What can I say?
Yeah.
I can't live with them. Can't live without them.
But if you're open to traveling and meeting new people and staying in all these different homes, you must be okay with all the messiness that goes along with that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, 100%. I think what I learned because of that experience is messy is relative, right? What's messy? That's very subjective. But it did make me so much more open. I think when I was growing up, I tended to be a more like black-white thinker. Everything. This is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad. Mm-hmm. But the more I live with people, and I'm talking, you sit with someone at their meal, you sleep in somebody's room, you use their towels, you use their knives and forks and stuff. I think by the time I had, just even a dozen of those experiences, I knew very quickly that, yeah, messiness is relative, and it really was about how open could I be? How open could I be so I didn't miss out on the opportunity to connect and to make this a meaningful experience, even if I was there for 3 days.
I have to tell you, there aren't many lives that I want to live, but I would freaking love that. I would love that. You
wish I could love it. I could tell.
Yeah, I would love it. I would just want to be a little mouse sitting there watching all the people. And I truly love learning about their beliefs and their customs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the best part, really. And here's the thing. It's not even because I traveled to different countries, right? It's not like you could say, going to Germany, this is the experience in the host family in Germany. I'm like, no, I had so many different types of experiences within the same culture, really. So a big part of it is, I remember a few that stand out to me was we happened to be in Austria during Father's Day. And there was this huge festival in the town we happened to visit. And yeah, the lederhosen, like that was the thing. That was real. Beer steins, all of that. But it was fascinating to have, this family, it was kind of a blended family brought together during the evening. They brought together all these different family members, joined them at their home, and we had a wonderful meal, and there was wine flowing, and it was a wonderful conversation. Some spoke English, some did not. They were translating for us. It was great. And, then I've also stayed in places like I stayed in a homeless shelter in Ohio. They hosted a group of us, about 10 of us stayed in this homeless shelter. We got to interact with some of the residents at the time. Stayed in not a youth hostel, what do you call it? An orphanage, actually, in Portugal, and hung out and spent time with these young kids there. And, I mean, it's just an experience, I think, of seeing humanity in a lot of different forms. So, fascinating.
Yeah, I love that. All right. Before we go down another rabbit hole, I want to get in your message to the women around the world and the men watching and listening, which is do what makes you come alive.
Yes.
Do that by applying, oh my God, to your gifts. I just had to say that. I've been waiting all day to say that.
You've been practicing. Sounds like you've been practicing.
I don't know. I think I'm like that all the time, but like, oh my God. So tell us more, Valerie.
So the first part really about the being alive, right? The coming alive is actually inspired by a quote by Howard Thurman, who I don't even remember how I stumbled across this person, Sandy. It was meant for me. Like it was something that was gifted, that particular phrase or quote. And the whole quote states, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs are more people who have come alive. When I saw that,
I don't know who Howard Thurman is, but I love it.
Yes, I right. Well, he was a theologian, also a mentor to Martin Luther King. So it was, I'm sure, an integral part of the civil rights movement in many ways. But that quote really spoke to me, and I've had it in my life ever since. And it's been several years now. In any case, one of the biggest lessons that I'm learning and continuing to expand on is this whole notion of aliveness. And aliveness does not just by virtue of us breathing and having a heartbeat, but aliveness in the sense of excitement and enthusiasm, kind of like what you bring, right? You think joy. And I watched your reel recently, your video, which is so lovely, and especially because you share that this was a way to bring life to the people who are living with your mother, right?
Yeah.
They're the people in that center,
and
it was a place to bring joy. But that was the idea of coming alive, right? So we have the ability to do things and be the type of person that walks into a space, and we either bring life or we bring death. And not necessarily literally, but we enhance the mood, and we uplift people, or we make people nervous or depressed and anxious with our presence. And I think that quote really tells me that the main thing is we have to identify what it is that makes us feel that way, and then go do it. So be in those environments, be in those conversations, have those types of activities as regular parts of our lives. And a lot of it in my work, because I work with leaders often, talking about leadership. How does one find aliveness when it comes to leadership? And that's where the, oh my gosh, comes in, the OMG. So that's how those two tie together.
All right. So right now, I'm getting questions coming in, and I'll filter some of them. You can reach out to Valerie. I'm not going to get to all of them.
Sure.
But they want to know, what are you right now focusing on with the global leaders? What is the big thing of all the three areas that it says conscious, connect, and creativity? What is the biggest thing you're like, wait a minute, people, we need to spend more time in this specific area?
Yeah, I would say that they're kind of interchangeable, but the O and the M. So OMG stands for own, master, and give away your gifts and your talents, right? So the two I think that comes up most often is own. Own primarily because oftentimes we are stuck with having learned something, because the school, the education we received, or the training that we received has us do certain things that we do over time, and sometimes we do extremely well. And because we do them well, they're generally requested more and more often. And the higher the skill, the more requested they become. But they don't necessarily always bring you to life, right? Just because you do something for a long time and you do it well doesn't mean it necessarily makes you feel aliveness. And aliveness being a enthusiasm and joy and fulfillment, right? And so oftentimes I have to, talk to leaders about, well, what are those things that make you come to life? And it doesn't necessarily mean there's a title or a job or a project. It could just be, I really love research. Like I had a client recently talking about how much she loves to research. But her job now as a director is leading other people in the research process. So she doesn't get her hands into the research piece as much, and was diminishing that, maybe my job now is really not to love research so much, is now to actually, take care of the people that report to me. And I'm like, that is true. And where else could you use what you love? How do you own the fact that you love research? What do you love about it? Because it's not only the action, there's usually something else within that action. So we peel it all back and see, oh, well, what I really love is an opportunity to become an expert in this one topic. So, gathering knowledge and learning seem to be important. So once we kind of peel those things back, then we can see, well, when you peel this back, how can you take this little microcosm of research and apply it to the lives of the people that you lead? And so we came to getting to know them better, like becoming an expert in those people, then could become a way for her to own that gift. And then also at the same time, master it, and just getting better at taking those little parts of, taking apart what we do really well that makes us come alive, and then being able to do that in more places.
I never thought of it that way, Valerie, and I love that, because I have so many clients and friends that feel they're stuck where they are. Like you said, they've been for 20, 30 years. They keep going up and up, and they're getting their hands away. They call it, they're not digging it. I call it, they're not digging in the dirt as much. But yet, that's where you go. This is where you go as far as, rising up.
Yes.
But I love the fact that you're breaking it down and working with people to say, okay, but how can we rekindle that passion? What part of it? Which is amazing what you did with this one client. Think about, there's other ways to do it that you might be more passionate about. Never thought of it that way. Never thought of it that way. And a lot of people, I think they just feel like, grin and bear it until they retire.
True. That does happen. And, what a shame. In fact, just recently I came across a book called I've Decided to Live to 120 Years by Il-Chi Lee. And I remember the first time I saw the book cover, I was just like, 120 years? Like, I don't know if I want that long. That seems like a lot of responsibility to keep myself alive and alive physically and alive emotionally for 120 years. But as I've been reading the book, and I'm not done yet, but what he talks about is that, yes, the first half of life often is dedicated to success, right? So that's the work that we do, the family that we raise, the trappings of whatever society says it makes success visible and tangible. And then he says after people leave that particular or have achieved the whatever level of success they deem insufficient, then what? Oftentimes it kind of coasts into retirement, and then retirement looks like just kind of chilling and hanging out until the end of life. And what he challenges people to do in his book is really think about where could you find aliveness in living that second half of life. And what he talks about in that second half is completion. He said the first half is devoted to success, and the second half is about completion. And I think we could have that now. We don't have to wait. We can do completion now. We don't have to wait for the second half of life. And completion meaning now we get to really start looking at what's fulfillment, what would be interesting and important enough to us. what relationships we want to continue to delve into, what activities we want to explore. And that's the completion of all the doubts and the I wish I had and the I wonder if it's too late. It's like, don't worry about that. Do it now.
Oh my goodness. I was thinking of, I was a guest on a podcast that's called Living to 100. And it was exactly what you're talking about,
There you go.
And, and when you meet people that are 95 and go, yeah, I think I'm going to start running now. Yeah, I just want to run. I think I'll run a marathon. And they do,
Yeah.
I love that mindset.
Why not? Yeah, you can. I remember my dad got remarried and he was 70. How old was he? 71 or something like that. And I gotta admit, one of my first questions was like, why? Like, why are you getting remarried? Like, what's the point? And he was like, why not? But after a nice conversation with him and what he saw for his life, I could really see that, this is his coming alive. This is where he gets an opportunity to do more of or better or the version of himself that he hadn't explored. And my mom's the same way. I got great role models because she's like, you know what? I'm going to start going back to school. I'm going to teach. And she's either enrolling herself in a class, and she's also in that age range, right? She doesn't like for me to talk about her age. So
we won't.
But yeah, it's like, it's never too late. Keep going.
Okay, so what are you up to now? Because before you came on the show, you and I were talking about you. I've never been to Oklahoma. All I think, I don't want to sing that song because I can't sing.
Oh, Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweep. Yeah, there was wind. It was windy.
Yeah. I'll dance, you sing. That was pretty damn good.
There
All
you
right,
go.
so what were you doing in Oklahoma?
I was actually there facilitating a workshop for a bank. Well, not for a whole bank, for leaders at a bank. So it was a full day. It was fantastic. We were working on our coaching skills. That's what I was doing with them. And yeah, it was a quick in and out of Oklahoma.
All right, so I've never, and I always wanted to do this, I've never just traveled somewhere for a day, did a workshop, and then left, ever, in my entire life with a group of people. And then, no, I've done it locally, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I've taught different things locally. So when you're there, I have so many questions to follow this up, but we only have a short period of time. But when you're there, specifically working with them on coaching, and you only have a day, how do you decide what to squeeze in when you only have a day with them to work on coaching?
What to squeeze into their workshop or what to squeeze into my life?
Well, I both. I like the interest of both, but in their workshop, like, okay, I'm only getting them a day. I've never met these people. Do you decide like ahead of time? Do you have your format and then you read the room? I mean, I know these are like so many different questions that must go in, but you have so much experience, so I'm sure it's all of that.
No, I mean, the easy answer is, so I have been contracted by our organization to come in and do this workshop. So they already had the content, essentially. Here's what we want them to learn. We want them to be more effective coaches and leaders in their job, right, or in their organization. What I tend to do when I put when I valorize it, I'm going to use that as a verb. When I valorize it,
Ooh,
I
like
tend to look at how to make that content come alive, how to give it a more experiential feel. So what exercises, what activities, what games, right, could we use to help get the same message across? So it's not just a series of PowerPoints and lecture points. It's really more about how do I get this to take place in a more physical way in their lives. And so it's easy. I mean, easy from the perspective of it's easy for me to think that way. Now, in execution, I only have a certain number of hours. And so part of it is just logistically looking at, okay, where would I want to invest those hours? What could I take that would make the most difference? And, I try to do at least 3 or 4 activities where they're not just sitting and listening or reading, but they're actually experiencing something. And yeah, I just love, that's where I get to get creative. That's where I come alive myself, because I would
Yeah.
be dead bored just talking and having them flip pages.
It's interactive.
It
Okay.
is.
Yeah. So, big question that's coming through is what do you do? But it kind of answered a little, but when you're not teaching these courses and you're visiting somewhere, do you try to make time for yourself
Mm.
to travel? This one, I think you were in and out, but most places they want to know: do you get to know the area, or are you just in and out?
You know, in the past when I've traveled, especially to places, much further. Oklahoma is 3 hours from me, by car, so I could if I wanted to, but I just don't always have the time and energy sometimes after a full day like that. But I do remember often when I go on international trips or trips to other states. For example, you and I saw each other, when was this? July, June, or something like that in New Hope, Pennsylvania, Lambertville, New Jersey. So when I went up there, I ended up going to what was it? There was like a garden center or something like. So I love plants, so you can kind of see I have some greenery here. So I'd
I
stop
like
by,
it.
and I got there early enough so I could do that. Also early enough so that I could get to eat some local food. So I mean, it's something small. It doesn't have to be anything big, but I think that brings a sense of aliveness to the trip. That is not just go to my objective and turn around and come home. But I do
Yeah,
something to feel like I've been actually in that community.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, they want to know: are you well accepted when you go? Do the people already like, yeah, Valerie's coming, and are they excited that their bosses have planned the day with you? Or do you have to spin it, as one guy says?
um, you know, so it's funny. This group, I'll talk about this group in Oklahoma, for example. Um, this is the second time I've spent with them. I was there in October for an event, also one day, working on their presentation skills and speaking skills. And then this time it was about coaching. My approach, because I tend to be very experiential and experimental, does put people a bit on edge. I really do challenge people. Yeah. And so I would say there is some trepidation. First, they're like, what is this person going to have me do? And why are we doing this? Where they probably did expect to be a little bit more passive in their learning, right? To receive more than to interact. And they knew that coming in. So this is the second time I've been with them, and they're like, I wonder what she has up her sleeve. But I tell you, 9 times out of 10, everyone comes up saying, I got pushed out of my comfort zone today and I liked it. And it was helpful. And this was useful. And I got something from it. So that's all that matters. We don't always know before we have an experience what we're going to get from it. So I hopefully express enough compassion for people that they can do it and trust me, make it safe
Yeah,
enough.
yeah. Okay, well, you know what's coming next. They want you to give them an example. Like, what's one thing that people are like, what? And what does this have to do with it? But then they go, okay. They want to know. I mean, it's coming
Example.
in.
All right, example. So one of the in the coaching session yesterday, we think about coaching as just this interaction where you're asking a whole bunch of questions and exploring different options. Yes, that's a big part of it. But another part that sometimes goes unnoticed is the amount of listening that's required, and specifically the type of listening that's required to be an effective coach, whether you're leading that person or you're a coach professionally. And so we did an exercise where I had them sit face to face on chairs, just sat face to face. And we started off by having them do that with their eyes closed, just face to face, eyes closed for a minute. Oh my goodness. You think I asked them to like strip down? Because in some cases it was like, why are we doing this? This was super awkward. They did it.
Wait, I'm writing this down.
They did it. Everyone participated. Then we
Okay.
took it up a notch. We did the same exercise with eyes open, now having to look at one another and not say anything. And what was interesting, and the whole point of the exercise, is to notice, where does your attention go when you're in the presence of another person? Is it in the, I wonder what they're looking at? Do I look still silly? Is this goofy?
Yeah.
Is it all about me, me, me? That's high self-orientation. Or can you be present and open to whoever's sitting in front of you? And so the redirect for me is then telling them, okay, now sit, look at the person in front of you, but think about what you appreciate, respect, or admire about that person. And all of a sudden, all that chatter becomes more honed into like, oh,
Ooh.
Sandy, she's radiant, she's so open, she's curious, she has this beautiful mane of hair. Like, I'm also now engaged with who you are as a human being in front of me, as opposed to how I'm being with you. And that was one of those examples where people in the beginning were like, I don't understand why. But as we built up the day, by the time they got into the coaching and asking questions, they could hold space for people, if nothing else, a fraction more than they would have before, thinking about, I hope I'm asking the right question. And I wonder if I look silly doing this, or this is so up. Like, forget that. Be.
Love it. Love it. I love it, love it, love it. Just that slight little shift and giving them what to think about took it off them. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. So that's an example. I mean, I got plenty of those, plenty of that where that came from. But it's really how to be present with people and how to project that safety, openness. And, as a leader, if your team can't come to you because they're not sure how you're going to react, or if you're too busy and distracted while you're talking, it's going to limit the amount of depth, and also the openness that they have to share. Hey, this is what's really going on, or here's my idea, or here's my opinion. And that doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah. As much as, and we could talk with the best of them, and I could yap to a tree, but I learned years ago that for me to just be present for someone and truly listen is a real gift, because most people don't do that. And to really, and even when I'm doing recorded podcasts, but especially live, you might have some questions, but if you're truly listen, you have to be willing to go in the moment. You don't want to go, all right, let's get to this question, because that means I'm not
true.
So I love that one. Oh, and I never heard of that one. So that was really cool. Okay. What's going on with the keynote? Tell them about that, because we talked about your leadership coaching, but talking about your keynote.
So a big part of what we learned when we were together at the Heroic Public Speaking is how to take this message, right? And for me, the message is how to come alive and stay alive in the workplace or within our lives. I think that's helpful. But also, I talk a lot about how to bring joy to conversations or areas like diversity, equity, and inclusion that can be fraught sometimes with so much stress. And a huge practice for me has actually been in my podcast. So I do a podcast called Not Quite Strangers. And that's been a great
title. Just love that title. I just have to say it. I love it. Love it.
Yeah, not quite strangers. So I bring together either two people who do not know each other or hardly know each other, and we have a meaningful conversation. It's not planned. There's no script. There's nothing. It's like we hang out in the coffee shop, basically, and have a conversation. And what's been helpful is that experience for me in connecting people and see the impact that someone has on just hearing someone for an hour or just inquiring about someone for an hour has fed a lot of the content that I put together for things like my keynote, right? When thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, oftentimes is really about get to know the individual, how to create that psychological safety, right? How to be curious about people, how to be open enough to shift our perspectives and establish a connection. And so that is my way to keep my skills sharp and relevant as I do this, and also as a model for others, hopefully to encourage others. In fact, this week we have an episode coming out, and I talked to a couple of people who are coaches as well, but we don't talk about coaching. We actually talk about how they became the caretakers for their parents and their in-laws as they were dealing with dementia and Alzheimer's, and what it took for them and what they learned from that experience, and what they're learning And I think a wonderful conversation about how to care for oneself and care for the people that you love. So that's what's happening.
Ingenious, by the way, ingenious. I'm so happy for you. I'm getting chills because it covers everything that you're about. You know what I mean? It's building from the keynote, from your leadership to your podcast. And you're right. You're getting information and filtering it, and it's all piggybacking off the other one.
That's the mission. That's what we do, right? So, you are committed to bringing joy and aliveness through movement. And sometimes it doesn't have to, I think that's the key. We sometimes get so lost in the vehicle that we forget the message. One of my favorite speakers says, you are the faucet. You are not the water. You are the faucet. You're not the water. In other words, our job is to be a channel. Our job is to be a conduit through which information, inspiration, wisdom comes through. And the vehicle doesn't matter as much. I have a lot of different vehicles, but the message is always going to be the same. Connect to people in meaningful ways. Bring joy to your life. Bring aliveness to yourself. That's it.
I used to say, for now, my vehicle is this, to spread joy. And then my vehicle is this. And they're all interconnected because, like you said, I love that. I love it so much, that you feel alive, versus the word passion. But I like feeling alive because it does. It brings me to life. So when I spread, it brings me to life. And there's going to be different ways that I do it. All right. One more question I have to make sure I get in about the podcast.
Yes.
When is it up? How often? How long have you been doing it?
I put an episode out every other week, and in the weeks in between, I put a challenge out for people. So at every given point, there's an opportunity to connect, right? So the idea is that the podcast episodes feature two people and me having a meaningful conversation, and hopefully that exchange inspires someone to go out and have a similar conversation with somebody in their life, or to connect to the people that they listen to. And then the weeks after, then the weeks in between, I send out a connection challenge. So for example, this week was a connection challenge. It was featuring this idea of caretaking. So talk to someone in your life who you would be taking care of. It could be a parent, a friend, a mentor, etc. And what are their dreams and wishes for the rest of their lives? What would they like for their life to look like, or the end of life to look like? And then what can you do to fulfill on that? So that was a challenge for this week. Next week, you'll hear the episode when we have that conversation. And for anyone that wants to subscribe and follow, they can go to notquitestrangers.com, or they can come to my website, valeriehope.com, and subscribe there. You can follow me on YouTube, any of the podcast platforms as well. And I hope people enjoy and get something out of it. If nothing else, that they are inspired to connect to people in their lives in more meaningful ways.
Valerie, I'm sure they will. So as far as reaching you, because I was going to make sure we included that at the end, that's how they can reach you. Like whether it's keynotes or your professional coaching or your leadership coaching, doesn't matter. It's all going to be there.
ValerieHope.com. That's the easiest way.
A great name for you. All right, Valerie, anything that you need to get out to the world that we didn't get in?
Yeah, how much I appreciate you giving, people, sharing a platform with people to share what's important to them, and what's meaningful to you is bringing joy. And I think you do that in every single way. Again, this is another vehicle for you. So I'm just grateful. I'm grateful to have known you and for you to have reached out and shared this with me.
I know, and you never know when our paths will cross again. You just never know.
Well, we didn't know it back in June or July or whatever it is.
A lot.
But there we go.
There we go. And also, as many places as I travel, I've never been to Texas.
Oh, there you go.
Through Texas.
Tell me where you are again?
I'm in Philadelphia, suburbs of Philadelphia.
Yes. All right.
So, lots to see, Valerie. Lots to see. All right, I got something to say. Come on, Valerie. Definitely had a lot to say, and I know you're going to want to share it, like it, and rate it, And don't worry if you didn't see the whole thing or you missed out. After we're done, I will record it and I will spread it on every platform. And you know what I'm going to say until next time. Valerie and Toodles.
Thanks, dear. Bye.
Bye.